Upon hearing her father's words that her ex husband was getting out of prison, a bolt of panic shot through Ashley like, wow, how could the report be true? Ethan had been sentenced to 15 years and had only served 8 so far. A criminal of his caliber would never be released early. Would he? That's not possible, she said. He's got 7 years left on his sentence. Ashley heard the screening door creak open and looked up to see Brett emerging from the rear of the house. A fresh wave of anxiety hit her. Her fiance had no idea she'd been married before. Child, what? Y'all ain't had that conversation? Okay. She hated herself for keeping the secret from Brett. She tried many times to find a way to tell him about Ethan. The first attempt was the day after they became engaged, but she just couldn't get the words out. Her first marriage had left her so scarred, the ordeal so painful, she couldn't force herself to talk about it to anyone, not even the man she loved. By not acknowledging that time in her life, she was able to push the memories into the farthest recess of her mind and keep them locked there, as if those days had never happened at all. She couldn't let Brett find out about her ex husband here and now, not in front of her family. She figured out a way to tell him in her own time. When they were alone, once she felt she could handle reliving the heartache, Ashley ran across the backyard to the house. I need to read that over because that was run on and didn't mean to be. Okay. She'd figure out a way to tell him in her own time when they were alone once she felt she could handle relieving the heartache. Ashley ran across the backyard to the house, determined to reach Brett before her brothers had the chance to spill the news about Ethan. You might be able to eat the venison, she told Brett, her hand on his arm, but I can't, not now, so please for me, would you go to the grocery store and get us a couple of sandwiches? Her fiance glanced across the backyard at her brothers and then nodded in agreement. She watched Brett climb into the SUV before heading back towards her family. She hoped the news regarding her ex was no more than a false rumor being spread around town. Lies created by Ethan relatives. How could Ethan get out of jail now? She asked her father. He's up for parole, Spencer said. Parole? She didn't believe it. If it were true, as Ethan's victim, wouldn't she have been notified? Where did you get this information? Your cousin, Clarence, and got himself a new job, corrections officer over at the pen, Spencer explained. Words from him, Rose told me this morning. Uncle Russ could always be counted on to keep his facts straight. Clarence had previously worked for the local sheriff's department, and out of all of her cousins, out of all of her family members in general, he was the most reliable. If the news had come from him, she pressed her eyes closed, ordering herself to stay calm, knowing in her heart the information was accurate. Shane cut in. Why didn't you tell me and Cal? Would have been the first thing come out of your mouth as soon as you seen her, Spencer told his son. Wanted to have a minute with her first. Ashley returned to the lawn chair, hovered on the edge, and looked directly at her father. Did Uncle Russ tell you when the parole hearing is scheduled? She asked him. Where is it going to take place? Yep, sometime Tuesday, Spencer said, at the prison. So soon? She had to stop it. She couldn't let them put that monster back on the street. Ashley rolled from the chair. She paced back and forth in front of the grill, scrambling to come up with a plan. If they released Ethan, he would search the world in pursuit of her. Even though she'd moved several times during his incarceration, how hard would it be for him to track her down? And once he found her, she couldn't allow herself to imagine what he might do to her. Should she run? Change her name and leave her fiance and the life she worked so hard to build behind? Ashley loved Brett more than she had ever dreamed possible. A life without him seemed unbearable. But how could she stay knowing that her actions could put Brett in jeopardy as well? She always feared the day her ex-husband's sentence would be completed. But a man as volatile as him, as prone to violent outbursts, usually seal their own fate once entering prison. She knew jailhouse brawls were common, and she knew that Ethan would fight to death. Up until now, she held out hope that he'd be killed by another inmate. A cold sweat broke out on the back of Ashley's neck. If Ethan wasn't stopped, Ashley knew it was her own life that might soon come to an end. There was only one option. She had to stand and fight. That's right. I'll go to the hearing and make a victim statement, she said. Once they hear what I have to say, there's no way in the world the parole board could ever let him go free. Ashley knew firsthand the level of evil in Ethan's soul. A man like him could never be rehabilitated. We'll all go too, Kyle spoke up. There were some things Ashley planned to say at the hearing that she'd rather her family didn't hear. Details they were better off not knowing, especially her father. No, she said, her voice firm. I need to face Ethan alone. You sure about that, baby girl? Her father asked. By his tone, she could tell he felt she was making a mistake by not allowing her family to go with her. Her father's intuition had proved to be true in the past. If she listened to him all those years ago, she wouldn't be in this predicament now. When she first shown an interest in Ethan, the older boy with dark curly hair and eyes so blue she could drown in them, her father, knowing she was headed for trouble, stepped in. Oh, okay, so he made it clear Ashley would not be allowed to date Ethan, but as a teenage girl, being told she couldn't have something made Ashley want it even more. The two had dated in secret, and the day after Ashley turned 18, they eloped. That's when everything between them began to change, when Ethan's true nature began to surface. I'm sure, Daddy, don't worry about me. I'll be all right, she said. Although her father had been right in the past, this time Ashley knew his intuitions was wrong. There was no way she could recount the horror she suffered at Ethan's hands with her father in the room, and she needed her testimony to be as strong as possible in order to convince the parole board to keep Ethan locked away. Might let him go anyway. Prison's crowded and all, Shane warned. Ashley had just recently watched a news report on television regarding the problem of overpopulation in Tennessee prisons. They were currently bursting at the seams. This must be one of the reasons Ethan had been granted a parole hearing. The conditions at the prison would definitely make it harder for her to convince the board not to let him out on parole. I'll just have to make sure the people on the board understand that it's not safe for Ethan to be released. I'll make them listen, she stated, determined to present her case so effectively that the board would have no choice but to deny Ethan's parole request. He's gunning for Ashley, Kyle said. He gets anywhere near her, I'll break his neck. Her gaze snapped towards her older brother as an icy fear flowed through her body. She knew Kyle was telling the truth. If given the chance, he would kill Ethan. Shane would as well. If they followed through on the promise, her brothers would be thrown into prison themselves, most likely landing on death row. Ashley heard her fiance SUV pulling into the driveway. Brett's back from the grocery store. I don't want any of you to say one word about Ethan's parole hearing, she warned them. Understand? Brett strolled into the backyard carrying a plastic grocery sack. Excuse me. Excuse me. A bag of chips peeking out of the top. His face had returned to its normal shade, but his expression made it clear he wasn't happy to be back among her family. You get yourself a latte? Some of that tofu stuff? Shane taunted. Be quiet, Shane, Ashley threatened. No way Soy Boy can go up against Ethan, he pushed further. I said, shut up. Ashley shot her brother a warning look that would freeze the sun. Brett's eyes narrowed. Who's Ethan? He asked Ashley, obviously surprised and confused. Why? Wait a second. Why couldn't Shane just keep his big mouth shut for once? Oh my God. Sometimes it felt as though her younger brother enjoyed causing her trouble. Shane is just trying to push your buttons. He'll say anything he can think of to get under your skin. Brett stared at her. For a moment, he seemed to accept her explanation, but she could tell her fiance was losing his patience with her brothers. It's time for us to leave, Ashley told them, hoping that nothing else would be said to raise Brett's suspicions. She went over to hug her father goodbye. She hoped that his condition would continue to improve. The next time she saw him, which she promised herself would be soon, he would look more like his old self. Promise me that you'll take care of yourself, Daddy. I'll be back to check on you in a few weeks, she said. I'll hold you to that. Bye, baby girl. Her father kissed her cheek. Brett stopped. Brett stepped towards the lawn chair. Goodbye, Spencer, he said, his voice flat. You watch over her, you hear? Her father commanded, obviously meaning more than he could say in front of his future son-in-law. I will, he promised. Her fiance looked forward towards her brother, still preparing the buck. Guys, I like to say it's been fun, but he let his voice trail off. Cal answered Brett first. See you around, he said. Yeah, later, Shane replied. Careful not to step on the tarp, Ashley moved towards her brother. With blood staining their hands, she decided it would be best not to hug them. Please don't let Daddy do too much, she said to Cal and Shane, and make sure he takes all of his meds and eat the way he should. We'll take care of him, Cal assured her. Shane nodded. Don't worry about us, he said, his eyes letting her know that she should be more concerned about her own predicament. She walked back to the SUV with Brett, close behind. As she climbed into the passenger seat, her fiance hurled the grocery bag into her lap, startling her, and sending the bag of chips flying into the floorboard. The hell? Brett slammed the SUV door shut and turned toward Ashley with accusation in his eyes. Who, he demanded, is Ethan? And that's the end of chapter 3. See you in chapter 4.